The way we take care of ourselves is ever evolving. And what we know for sure is that our mind and spirit are linked to our physical body, and that our wellness seems to extend into our communities and the planet we all share. It is very, very clear that wellness is interconnected. We love spending time with you to explore and practice the breakthroughs, the insights, and the passions of incredible people helping us all see the world in a whole new light. This is Health Gig. So Tricia and I are very excited today to welcome Dr. Judith Orloff to our conversation on Health Gig today. She's been called the godmother of the empath movement, and she has a new book called The Genius of Empathy. So welcome, Dr. Orloff.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
And so we want to dive into your favorite subject, which is empathy. Can we begin with sort of a definition of empathy?
I believe empathy is the medicine that the world needs. And that's why we ended up in this predicament, and it's what can save us. I feel just basically very strong about that. And what empathy is the ability to feel what's going on in somebody else and to really be able to have an attunement or resonance. Somebody is going through sadness or loss or some kind of physical pain or happiness or joy or creativity. Empathy allows you to attune to your fellow human, which is such a precious gift.
So empathy is, as you're saying, a way that we can connect. It's not sympathy, because we'll hear, oh, they're so empathic. So the idea is it's someone that can really feel. Is that right?
Yes, there's a spectrum of empathy. The midpoint of the spectrum are people with everyday empathy, which is so beautiful. It's like, I feel for you. I know what you do matters to me. You're important to me. They make you feel that way. It's so beautiful. And then a little bit higher up is the highly sensitive person who is sensitive to sight, smells, sounds, crowds, and tends to get overloaded. And then the top of the spectrum are the empaths. And I happen to be an empath. And I'm also a psychiatrist.
Yes. We want to hear about that.
And an empath is someone who doesn't have the ordinary filters that other people have. So you can sense very deeply into other people. But the downside is that you absorb their problems and their stress. And what I wrote about in this book is how not to do that, how to have empathy and not absorb, how to observe, not absorb.
Observe, not absorb. Okay.
So how do we do that? Let's just begin there.
It starts with examining the beliefs that many people have from different religious upbringings that in order to be compassionate, you need to give all. Every moment of the day, to everyone who needs it, you're only compassionate if you give all, and if you set a boundary, you're selfish. Or you say, no, I can't do it, you're selfish. And so the first thing is to realize that's not true. You can be extremely compassionate and empathic, but part of being empathic is showing self-empathy. There's a chapter in the book on self-empathy, which seems like it would be so easy to find, but it's really kind of hard for a lot of people to speak to themselves in a nice way rather than beat themselves up all the time and torture themselves with their mind. Oh, you did a terrible job. Oh, you could have done better. What's the matter with you? You should not be feeling sadness right now. What is wrong? Anyways, that's the negative voice.
Right.
But the empathic voice is, you were in a difficult position and you did a great job. I am so proud of you. Go home and take a bath. Go home and take a walk. And just reward yourself for being there in a difficult situation and being nice to yourself.
What is the difference between compassion and empathy?
Empathy is the ability, I feel what you're feeling. My heart feels you. I could feel your emotions. And then the downside, of course, is if we don't learn how not to do it, we take them on. And so we're bearing the burden of other people, which isn't really any of our business to do, but it requires skills not to do it. But compassion is more, your heart opens and you want to do something to help somebody. It's more action-oriented. You're compassionate for their situation, but you want to go and do something. And you do. And you make the person's life easier. There's a discussion about this now, and people say that it's safer to be compassionate than to be empathic because you don't tend to absorb. And that's true, except for you don't get the deep connection. And for me, as
Yes.
an empath, that's the most important thing in my life is connection to
Yes.
people, to nature, to my writing, to the water, to the sun, the moon. I want to feel it all while I'm here.
Yes.
Judith, when did you realize you were empathic, or when were you able to label it?
Well, I didn't have a name for it when I first experienced it as a child. I was an empathic child. I was an intuitive child. I would get all kinds of intuitive information about people and tell my parents, who are both doctors. And when you're unskilled with intuition, oftentimes you say things that are scary because negative things are easier to pick up. And so I would say things about my parents' friends, such as, I don't think the relationship is going to work out. I would say these things they
You
didn't really want to hear.
say.
Yeah, they didn't want to hear. And so finally they said, never mention another one of your entities again at home. That's what silences children. That's what shuts them off. And I grew up ashamed of my empathy and being told you're too sensitive, toughen up,
Yes.
get a stronger shield. You're not okay as you are. That was the message. And for
Yes.
everyone listening, that's not true. Your sensitivity is beautiful. You need to develop it. You need to learn how to develop certain skills so you don't absorb the angst of this tumultuous world. You realize that you don't have to help people 100% of the time to be empathic, because you can't. You have to rest. You have to take a break. You have to take care of yourself so you're in good shape when you help others.
Yes, that makes sense. It's so funny you say that you grew up with your family telling you you're too sensitive. I grew up that way because I cried easily and things touched me. I remember really mainly my mom would say, "You're just too sensitive." And you're right, it does shut you up, to the point where I never spoke up to my mom for the rest of her life. Finally, one time I tried and it didn't go well, but I understand what you're saying.
It's this very damaging message to send to children. That's why I feel so strongly about encouraging empathy in children from the very beginning. Because if they grow up, let's say they remember their dreams. That's one form of intuition and empathy. And they sit around the breakfast room table and share their dreams. That's a much better scenario than, don't tell me that. That's scary. It's
Yeah.
like, I invite you here. Let's sit around the table and talk about our dreams.
How do you treat yourself with more kindness when you're labeled as too sensitive and you beat yourself up for everything you do wrong?
That's common among many people. And I think just beating yourself up a little bit less each day is progress. So you have to be compassionate. You have to have lower expectations, because if that's a habit, or let's say you came from a family of people who have empathy deficient disorder, and these are people who are narcissists, psychopaths, and sociopaths. And there's a whole
Yikes.
chapter in the book on how to handle these people, as you can, but you need instruction. You need to know how to identify them and realize they have empathy deficient disorder, meaning they're not capable of empathy as we know it. And that's so hard for empaths to get. They go, no, I'm going to help heal them. If I just do this, if I just do that, or they didn't mean to call me stupid, they were just stressed out, that kind of thing. You have to believe it. And everyone can diagnose a narcissist, sociopath, or psychopath. I have a list of what you look for, and it's all predictable. They all pretty much do the same thing. It's important to realize that some people don't have empathy. And if you are raised by these people, they are not going to support you in being kind to yourself. They're going to support you in kowtowing to them so that they feel powerful.
How do you determine someone who's a narcissist or any of those things you just talked about?
One factor is they gaslight you. They make you think you're crazy, where you believe, I believe that this is a beautiful day and I'm going to be happy today. And they say to you, what are you talking about? You're a miserable wretch of a person who doesn't deserve to be happy today. So they'll try and put you down to put themselves up. You have to realize that's not normal. Because somebody who loves you, they want you to be powerful. Somebody who's a narcissist wants you to give away your power. It's a big
Yes.
difference, and you deserve to be treated well as a human and as an empathic person. We're sensitive. We need to be around lots of love, lots of encouragement, lots of creativity, lots of sleep. Sleep is very important for empaths, and lots of TLC. Not that we're fragile. It's not a fragility. It's just a beautiful instrument, like a Stradivarius. You have to take care of it. It's this amazing instrument. You have to take care of it in a certain way. You can't bang it around.
We mentioned boundaries earlier, but talk about how we set those boundaries without hurting people or all the things that could happen when you put up boundaries.
Well, it's on a spectrum from easy to hard, because you can have a more simple kind of boundary. Like if somebody pulls in front of you in a parking lot, you could just say that's not okay, but don't make a big deal about it because it's not important. But to set a boundary with behavior, I know people always ask me, I give a lecture, and then afterwards people come up with a lot of questions and they want me to answer a lot of questions. And sometimes, it's after an hour and a half talk, so my energy is going down and I need to go home. I need to take a bath. I need to be quiet. So I'll just tell people, I'm so sorry. I wish I could answer all of your questions, but I can't because I'm really tired now and I need to go take care of myself and practice self-care. So I model that. They understand. But it's about saying a positive no. Positive no, not a nasty no, not a snitty no, but a positive no. So you're in a grounded place when you do it, but it's no nonetheless.
Exactly.
Think of all the millions of ways your tone could be in that statement where you're saying no to somebody, but you want them to feel it's a gift of love that you're giving them. I wish I could do this, and I'm so sorry I'm disappointing you, but I've got to go home. And being grown-ups, you have to get used to disappointing people sometimes. You can't always be people pleasers. I know I would love everyone to be happy. I would love everyone to be healed everywhere around the world, but it doesn't work that way. That isn't how healing works. Healing is an individual thing. You have to have the desire inside. It's very important that in your life, your immediate life, your family, even with your animals, you have to set boundaries with your animals. Maybe don't have them up on the couch all the time when other people are there and they're all licking them. And I don't know. It's how you say it. I love your cute doggy. Let's put him down on the floor for a while so we can have some space. It's your tone of voice and it's your eye contact. You don't want to probe somebody with your eyes. All right, that's too intrusive. You don't want to be on top of them. You want to give a light gaze, a firm tone, and a smile, and make it short. That's another rule of making boundaries. Don't get into a confrontation.
Sometimes with boundaries, do you have to explain why you're putting up the boundary, or can it be, I just can't do that, no, but thank you, and that kind of thing?
Yeah, you could do it either, but if people understand it, it's sometimes nice. Like if I say I'm tired and I've got to go home now and take care of myself, they understand that.
Yeah.
The point is, you have to take care of yourself. With a lot of my patients, they feel guilty after they set a boundary. They feel guilty. And so you have to learn how to work with that in terms of who told you that. If you set a boundary, who told you that you're supposed to feel guilty? And it's that original belief that to be compassionate, you have to be a martyr, basically. That's what a lot of people are taught. And if you want to be an empathic person, and you want to be a sensitive person and benefit from the connection to people, to nature, to everyone, you have to set a boundary. This isn't optional. You have to learn this skill, but you can do it from your heart. I had somebody trying to get me involved with this complex situation the other day. I just said to them, well, I surely don't want to get involved with that. That's way over my head. And they what? They actually made a comment. That's a really good way to set a boundary.
Judith, let's talk about codependency and how that's different from healthy empathy.
Yes, there's a chapter in the book on healthy giving, and you can take a quiz on whether you're a codependent giver or a healthy giver. A codependent giver puts the other person first and sees everything in terms of what you can do for the other person and gets overly involved with the other person. So it's about trying to fix them rather than letting them be. A healthy giver doesn't do that. A healthy giver has clear boundaries. They know when they can give. They know when they're not able to give. And they don't try and people please everyone in order to make themselves feel valuable. Codependency, you lose yourself in relationships. And you're empathic. Codependents are the most empathic people in the world, but it's overly so. It's too much. You need to learn how to set boundaries and be a healthy giver. A healthy giver gives sometimes, doesn't give sometimes. It's not always giving kind of thing to be empathic. You have to learn how to take care of yourself and listen to your body, listen to your energy level. Unless it's an absolute emergency, this whole journey of empathy is not wearing yourself out so you're so tired you can't function. That's not at all what I'm teaching. Dealing with empathy and developing empathy in yourself is a way of healing yourself. It's a way of opening your heart and being able to see things from a wider perspective and having compassion and mercy on yourself. We all go through so much. Sometimes you can't see what people go through because they look, quote, good on the outside. But people go through so much. You have no idea. And so it's important. And as a psychiatrist, that's been a great honor, sitting across from one other person, for years, listening to what people go through. You have to value yourself as well as the other person to have a healthy relationship. And you can't just keep giving and be obsessed with somebody else if they're going through an illness. All you think about is them, which is natural. But you have to tone it down a little bit so you can practice self-care. And empathy, I emphasize this over and over again in the book, is about you. It starts with you. For you just to give lopsided empathy and it's all about everybody else won't be a balanced kind of healing energy that I'd like you to feel. The healing that I'm talking about is when you close your eyes and you go into your heart and you say, I want to feel empathy for myself right now, nobody else, just me. And I deserve it, and I'm a good person, and I could just sit here quietly and not do anything for anyone. Take a break from giving. To be able to replenish oneself with that loving kindness in the heart is a very beautiful thing to do. No ritual I have is that every night I meditate at my altar. And it's usually about 11 at night before I go to sleep. And I light my candles, burn the incense, and I open the window so I can hear the ocean at a distance. And I sit and I breathe and I reconnect with myself and let the stress go. Whatever has accumulated, whatever you want to just let it go and feel your heart and have empathy for you, what you've been through. And then what happens is I start to feel very good because my heart begins to open, and the heart is the most important thing. You'll feel it in your chest, and it will be a warmth that will open like a sun inside your chest and remove all your anxieties. And having empathy for yourself frees you from the torment of the mind, the monkey mind, as the Buddhists say. It can torment you. And so many people do walk around tormented by their mind. If that's you, that's okay. But just notice that's something you would like to shift, because that's, you deserve more than that. The Dalai Lama wrote the foreword to this book, and it was a real honor for me. In the foreword, he writes about the value of empathy and compassion and how he feels that that's the most important thing. I couldn't be more in alignment with that. You look at our world full of wars and polarization and so much hatred, a lack of emotional intelligence. you see all this, and it's a cause for sadness because it's, so blind and off. And so we want to create a different kind of world. And you can start with yourself. And that's why this book, The Genius of Empathy, is so important that I wrote it at this time. You never know when a book comes out because it takes a really long time to write. But at this particular time where so many things are falling apart, and you must not be deterred. It's very important that you're clear about your values and what means something to you. If empathy and love and connection means something to you, you have got to put that to the test now. You've got to feel the power of that and live your life according to that. And when it's hard to set a boundary, go to the book and open up the page. This is how you do it. Again, you start over and over. I can't tell you how many times I've begun again where I just gave up the day before and it was just too much. So I take care of myself. I sleep, I watch movies, whatever I do to bring myself back. And then the next day I wake up and it's a new day. And so you start again. So I want to give everyone permission. If you feel like giving up one night, give up. But the next day, with your eyes open, see what you see.
It's a mindfulness practice, empathy.
It's a mindfulness practice. It's a healing practice. I can't overemphasize the importance of developing empathy within yourself so you can feel the healing energy going to parts of your body that need it and going to your emotions that are so beleaguered and that need tender, loving care. The human soul gets so tired at times, and empathy can replenish. See, we need something on a regular basis to replenish our energy, no matter how good a people we are. We need to be replenished. It becomes a heavy burden otherwise. And we want to wear it lightly. We want to wear our empathy lightly. We want to start over again each day and not carry the weight the day before. You want to consciously use an empathy practice not to do that. Good technique is doing an inventory before you go to sleep and say, where wasn't I able to give empathy? Where did I say something I regretted that I might need to apologize for, or what went really well? So you could just have a quick empathy inventory and then take steps. I do that pretty much every day. And I'll go to somebody. It's hard for the ego to say, I'm sorry. The ego doesn't want to do it, but your heart does. So I just hope to get across the point that there are two places in you that I'm talking about. Your ego, your head, and then there's your heart. And they have two different ways of seeing the world.
Yes, we want to see from our heart rather than our head, if we can. Children often learn by example, but not everybody has empathetic parents. So how do you teach children empathy?
Well, it depends what they've been through already. If they've been raised by alcoholic, abusive parents, they probably made a good start to being hard on themselves because they integrate those voices. And so you have to teach them, no matter how old they are, you go, this is how you started, but this is where we're going now. And the secret to life is to be kind to yourself. Not to let yourself off the hook if you did something that wasn't so good, but to be kind to yourself as a whole and to show yourself empathy. These children have been traumatized to have been raised with parents like that. And so like you would treat any trauma, you would treat it with a lot of empathy, a lot of re-education. You're not too sensitive, honey. Your sensitivity is beautiful. And I want to help you support it. They might be so shell-shocked from being punished for being sensitive. It might be a little bit of hard work to come back, and feel safe. Like people really can appreciate this about me. Because I know both my parents were physicians and I have 25 physicians in my family. So I had this whole logical, linear legacy in my background. And I was this highly sensitive little girl who just wasn't wired in the same way as my relatives. And I didn't have anybody to talk to about it. And so a lot of sensitive people grow up feeling quite alone. If I would reach out to the moon was always my friend. Or the trees. I love the sky, always looking up. I literally felt like an alien here on Earth as a child. I didn't really fit in. And I had a few good friends. I always had one best friend, as that's my way. I just want to say for everyone listening, if you can relate to any of this, I'd like to begin to transform your ideas about yourself so you can really see your beautiful gift of empathy and develop it no matter what age you are now. You could be 10, you could be 93, whatever you are, you can start now.
Tricia and I are at the age where we're taking care of parents and grandchildren and we're caregivers. And so how do you be an empathetic caregiver while also practicing self-care?
Well, that's the essential part, isn't it? Because when you're a caregiver, you give oftentimes more than what you have. For that reason, you need to spend time apart from the loved one that you're caring for. It's absolutely essential. You have to pull yourself away and go for a walk in the woods. You have to think about something else. You don't want to be obsessing about your loved one. And it's so natural to want to do that. You're just always thinking, how can I help? What if we did this? What if we did that? Coming up with solutions. It's just natural. But you want to take this pause from that. As if you stay in that state, you will burn out and you will go on empathy overload. So I understand the good intentions behind being such a caregiver, but part of caregiving is taking care of yourself. It's not always taking care of somebody else. The lesson is twofold. It's for the person going through the challenge, and it's for you in terms of learning to practice self-care and getting yourself in good shape. So when you come back to the loved one, you have more energy and you're not just dragging. It's a sacred act to be someone's caregiver. I've had quite a bit of experience with this, and it can be extremely draining. You need to realize that and eat well, sleep well, just do the basics of taking care of yourself and laugh sometimes. Because you don't want to be the glum person who's coming to be with the sick person. You want to have a little lightness of being. You don't want to be a heavily weighed down person who's like, oh, you want to carry a lightness of being with you and not look at them as if they're so sick. You don't want to do that. You want to look at their strength. And you also want to acknowledge whatever challenges they're going through for sure. But you don't want to just sit there and think about it all the time. You know, they don't.
No. With caregiving and having that lighter sense of being, I imagine acceptance comes into play, because if you're fighting the fact that your parents are dying or all of that, it makes things more difficult, I imagine.
In my experience and working with a lot of people who have experienced quite a bit of loss, my God, there does come to a point where you see it's not turning back. When they're ready to go, you sense it. Sometimes there's still a lot of hope and there's still a lot of things you can do, and that's different. But if you listen to your intuition, there comes a time, and you have to attune to that with your empathy, that they're going that way. They're going out. And you may not want them to go ever, but they are going. And we're all going to go too. So, if that helps, or does that make things worse? I don't know. But it's the truth. You need to make their passage as loving and as light and as honoring what they want, as possible. And not just think, oh my God, they're dying. How horrible. Just to try and think about it like, I have empathy for myself. This loss is going to be really hard for me, really hard. But I'll get through it one day at a time because I know myself. I will, even this. You need so much empathy to do this. And that's why I want to prepare people like in this podcast. Maybe you're not at that state with a relative yet. Maybe they're just infirm for some reason and they're going to feel a lot better and recover in a while. So it's different. Whatever, everybody has something different. But if they're on their way out, that's a very special circumstance. And all you can do is help them go. And hopefully you do it with a lot of light so they're not alone. Whenever I'm working with the dying, I always honor everything they say. It's about them. It's not about anybody else. They get to have their wishes granted.
How do you use empathy to change the rules of power games and to support inclusivity?
Empathy isn't about power games. I start the book, The Genius of Empathy, with a quote by Rumi, and it's translated by Coleman Barks. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. And the point is, to me, is that we're not doing it the right way now. We need to go to another field. We need to have a common field where we could come together and start all over again, because our way isn't working clearly. It repeats itself. And so there is another place we can go together and almost start like you're reimagining humanity again. What's going to work? And how are we going to listen to one another? There's a chapter in the book on empathic listening. The basics of what human beings want is they want to be heard, they want to be seen, they want to feel important, and that you value them. So if you give them that, even if you're, let's say, think of a terrible example, if you're with a horrible dictator who's done all these god-awful things, they're expressing something to you, and it's really sort of miserable what they're expressing. But you listen to them just for a short time. You listen and, and just tell them, I've heard what you said, and I'll take it under consideration. And if there's any chance of getting through to them, that's the way to do it. If there's any chance their inner child or whoever is in there is going to melt and go, oh, well, let's talk about this now, where they might get off their high horse and, come into the human realm of heart to heart. You'd be surprised. It doesn't happen all the time, for sure, but it is the only chance we have of communicating.
Let's talk about empathy when you have a crisis, like an argument or something. How do you do that?
I'm glad you're bringing up all these practical experiences. If that's what I wanted to achieve in the book, was to say, in this situation, this is how you show empathy, and this might be an obstacle. But let's say you're arguing with somebody. Instead of getting into polarizing, as arguments get toxic when you polarize, and one is right and the other is wrong, and I'm right and I'm not giving that up, you start getting into that, and that's nowhere land. You don't get anywhere that way.
Exactly.
The empathy is, at the very least, take a pause. If things are escalating with your spouse who you love so much, but you're in this heated argument, calling each other names, that's not going to help anything. You want to take a pause. So you want to come back to yourself. You can have empathy for what the person is saying, even if you disagree with them. And that's a stretch of the heart. Even though you disagree, you can see how important it is to them. You don't agree, but that's okay. You can be with your spouse and not agree and maybe reach some kind of compromise when you calm down. But in the yelling state, you can't do anything. In terms of empaths, raging and yelling and shaming and blaming is all very toxic, and it doesn't work. And so if you catch yourself getting into those patterns, because maybe that's how your parents treated you, and now you're treating your children that way, that's not a pattern you want to continue. And you want to have empathy for what they're saying, even though it might be hard. You make that extra stretch and let me really try and see what they're saying, even though I don't get it and it's offending me. Let me just see if I can go a little farther with that. And if you just have a presence, you'd be surprised what people respond to and how they soften. You want people to soften. Empathy does that. You don't want them to get more rigid in their ideas. You don't want that, because then they start shoring up all their defenses and they're unreachable. You want them to be heard, even if you don't agree. And you have to have the goal of coming together if there's an argument. The goal can't be being blown apart. And sometimes, I've been in disagreements with my partner and it's going the wrong way. And this isn't going well. Better take a pause, better do something, but don't say anything else. Because one thing I tended to say, when I get overwhelmed as an empath, airports can do that to me. I get very overwhelmed and I'll say things I regret. And one of the things I say to him is that I can't be in a relationship. That's what I say when I get overwhelmed. That's how I feel at the moment. I can't do anything. I just want to be alone. And he's come to learn to say to me, I think you need to go take some alone time now and not talk anymore. And then I come back to myself. But these forms of empathic communication, you sometimes have to talk to your partner about ways that you can hear things, at a particular time and the tone with which they convey something. Sometimes people have safe words in arguments where they pick a word like pineapple. If it's just getting so out of hand and open, you're both going at it, you could just say pineapple, and that is an agreement to stop.
So what happens if you are married and you're on the upper scale of empathy? You're the top, you're an empath like you, and you're married to someone who has no interest and is not empathetic at all. Do you stay married or what do you do?
It would depend if there was love there.
Let's say there's love there, but you're just on a completely different plane from each other.
I wouldn't say so. I think there's more in common than you could know. I think you have an old story going on in your head about this. He's like looking the wrong direction, let's put it that way. He needs to turn around and look at you when he talks to you. That would be a first improvement. He doesn't have to empathize with anything. You'd be surprised. Sometimes spouses can get fixed in their ways. And so you have to be the one to bring about the change. You see, the change starts with us. You could just assume we have nothing in common or he's not empathic and I'm empathic. My partner is not an empath. I would not want to be with an empath. It would drive me crazy. It would be too much going on. I like the rock is the person that I talk about. The rock, someone who's solid, steady. They might not be that emotional, but they can learn to be. But you don't want to give up on those people. You want to see their positive points and you want to come about it from a different angle. Because sometimes you have these curmudgeonly partners who can really make some good changes.
I can't believe we're running out of time, but I did want to ask you about your psychiatry practice. Tell us how that works.
Well, I'm a psychiatrist in Los Angeles, and I have a global Zoom practice, and I combine my traditional medical skills with my empathy and my intuition. Whenever I listen to a patient, I bring in all those different forms of perception in service of healing. And always part of therapy with patients is learning how to be more empathic with self and others, and learning some skills for navigating situations rather than getting caught up in the drama of what people want to create, because a lot of them are into drama. I use my skills from all over the place, and I have friends who are traditional psychiatrists and physicians and some that are not. I have a wide range of people I respect. I combine all that in my work with patients, and I also give workshops, and I'll be on a book tour for the Genius of Empathy. And I love having empathy Q&As where people come and they ask questions. What are the hard parts of this? How can I be more empathic when I'm so tired? How can I build my energy up? How can I help the world when it seems like nothing I do can help? These are all common questions that so many people have, and I love to dialogue about them. So in my events, we always have that together time to do that. And I think having these discussions and having podcasts like this are really important in giving people new ideas for how to behave in this crazy world. So you don't want to deal with the problem on the problem's level here. You'll get too exhausted. There's a greater motive, a greater reason to be here.
So having an empathetic worldview is the way we're going to heal and come together and just be better.
Be better. Little by little. I love baby steps. You don't have to make these huge transformational changes. Just smiling at somebody, instead of being so in your world that you're in a bubble and never acknowledge anybody walking around. Just a little smile. And now it breaks the ice. The human family has to feel wanted. And you have your own family, and then there's the human family, which is our greater family. We're all humans. You can't fight that. And so that makes us all one family because there are biological and genetic similarities. We're really not that different in certain ways, certainly in belief systems. There's a wide range. But I bring up empathy as something for you to consider as a technique to incorporate into every day of your life. as something to value and decide whether or not you do value it. If you don't, if you'd rather keep getting in fights with people and polarizing, and no, but some people do, they're more into power than they are into love. If you want to do that, go for it. I'm not interested in that path, but God bless you. But we can go another path. We don't have to go that path. And we can go the path of kindness and love, and that doesn't make you a pushover. You can be extremely strong and grounded and connected, being sensitive. These aren't little wispy flowers. These are strong, connected people once you learn some of the techniques I teach in this book. We're strong and connected most of the time, not all of the time, but for a good part of the time, you don't have to worry about going outside and being blown away by the energy.
A couple of things. How do people find your book? How do people find your website? And would you come back and talk to us again?
Yes, of course I'll come back. How do people find my website? It's Dr. Judith Orloff, ORLOFF.com. And the book is there. It's on Amazon. It's on all online booksellers and brick and mortar booksellers. And on my website, I'm offering a special offer with a free empathy book and lots of empathy webinars that go along with the book purchase. So you get a lot of educational materials along with it. And it's at drjudithorloff.com.
I'm so glad that so many people are going to be able to read your book and learn how to love ourselves, be more empathetic to ourselves and to others.
Thrilled that you're here.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for joining us on Health Gig. We loved having you with us. We hope you'll tune in again next week. In the meantime, be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast and follow us on healthgigpod.com. I'm Tricia. And I'm Doro. Be well.